This week on the Hot Mess Teacher Express, we are talking all about letting students fail and the discipline issues that we have in the United States and how they're handled in the UK. We are highlighting some amazing teachers in education, those case managers, so please stay tuned. Welcome to another episode of the Hot Mess Teacher Express. I am your conductor, loyal, true, here with you. Choo choo. Teacher Tales of Miss Smith, Jess Smith. Yeah. And oh, you're here too.
Okay, and yeah, I'm here, unfortunately. My name's Mr. Thomas English, hashtag,
Oh,
wait a minute, why am I hashtagging? My name is Mr. Thomas English, aka Mr. Thomas, aka Vinny Thomas, aka sat right here, right now.
Yeah, you are. Yeah,
Stunning.
you are. Stunning.
There was no energy in that delivery
there
whatsoever.
Was not. Are you okay?
I am.
Okay.
Trying to go Disney after this.
Oh, okay. Magic. It was the magic just like calling you too much. Yeah.
It is.
Okay. Let's start out today with a little bit of a hot take. This is where Vinny and I take something that might be controversial and might have some different opinions out there. And we give our unfiltered, amazing opinions on it. Take is letting students fail. Have you done this before?
I feel like we're gonna get two different perspectives:
yes,
high school versus
So,
elementary.
yeah.
Because I imagine elementary is kind of like you need to get them through to the next grade, like, you know, no matter what it takes.
There's a little bit of wink, wink, nod, nodding.
Yeah. Versus in high school, it's definitely you need to have X amount of credits to graduate. And if you don't graduate, you know, you got to retake stuff. You got to do like summer classes, summer school, modules. We had quite a lot where people would do like credit recovery and stuff.
Okay.
And then my district also had like a school that was like specifically designated as like basically the credit recovery school.
Really?
Where like if students were like not on track to graduate, they would go to that intensive school where it would be like, and it was also, I think, like a behavioural school as well, where if there were like students that like just weren't able to like succeed within the gen ed classes as well, when they were behind on credits, they would also be sent there as well. So it was usually like, it was like a last resort. You literally need 10 credits to graduate in 1 year and there is no way you're getting that here. So yeah, it was a very like, so we had that in my district as well.
Okay.
And yeah, I feel like especially like when you first start teaching, like, to me, I'm like, a student failing in my class feels like a representation of me as a teacher.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like, oh my gosh, they're failing because I suck and I haven't done my job.
Yeah.
And I feel like when I first went into it, that was the mentality I had. And I was like, I need to get every student passing. Like a student that's on an F or a D or whatever in my class is not acceptable. And that's a representation of me. And I taught freshmen. So I was like, these are students that are new to the school. They need additional support because they've never been in high school before. They're going to that next stage into like teenage years, adulthood, all of that stuff.
Right.
And yeah, I was very much like, I need to allow everyone to pass. And I remember in my first like semester, I think I had like one, maybe two students out of 150 fail.
Oh my gosh.
By the end of it. And I was still like in my head, like I've still got one or two, like, but that was me riding them every single day.
Yeah.
I would like literally keep a live track of their grades. And like during like lesson, if I'm circulating, doing anything, I would literally target those students that were failing and be like, right, you need to do this. Actually, don't worry about today's activity. Do this instead. You need to do this right here, right now with me. Come to my desk. I'm going to help you. And I literally spoon fed them to the point of no return. I had not a free moment to myself. I was stressed 24/7.
But that's what it takes sometimes, and to get those students to not be failing.
To the point where I was like, and then I kind of got to this point where I was like, I care more about this student's grade than they do.
Yeah.
And that's an issue.
Right. And at what point are you just like, okay, I'm fighting a losing battle here because you're not going to pass if you don't want to.
Yeah, and that's when I then spoke to like other teachers that taught the same grades, and I would be there like, oh my gosh, right now I have 5 students that are failing. Like I'm trying all these things, all of these like, modifications, whatever I can do to try and get them to get the credit to pass.
Yeah.
And then I speak to other freshman teachers and they're like, you've only got 5, I've got 25. And I'd be like, wait, what? And it would be like, wait, so actually I'm in the minority with having that little failures. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm a failure because I've got 5 that are failing. But then the veteran teacher next door that's been doing this for 10 plus years and I would assume knows more of what they're doing than I am, has 25 students failing with the exact same set of students that I have.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, am I over-inserting myself and am I doing too much? And in doing so, am I letting my students down because I'm not giving them skills of how to succeed on their own? Because the moment they leave my classroom, they have another teacher next year and they're not going to spoon feed them in the same way that I am.
Right. And are you setting your students up for failure for the next year?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where the crux of the issue. So you did not let students fail.
So
you did everything in your power.
Originally, I didn't. So I kind of like adapted as I went through it, where I would basically do it because I mainly taught the freshmen.
Yeah.
I would do it where each quarter I would basically wean them off.
Yeah.
Where it's like the first quarter, I would be on them and I'd be like, I'm checking in, and I could kind of gauge from the students, like, is this a student that, is going to be able to do this with little to no support? Is this a student that I'm going to have to ride the entire year? Is this a student that I can literally spend hours of my day every day trying to get them to pass and they just will not do the work?
Yeah.
And kind of like using that to like then help me within the next few quarters. And then, I think it got to a point where I feel like it's that thing where as a teacher, especially a new teacher, you go into it and you're like, I want to be the teacher that makes a difference. I don't want any student failing.
Yeah.
I want everyone to flourish. And unfortunately, it's a sad truth, but you learn really quickly that is not possible.
That is not, like, you see these inspirational movies of teachers who take these classes that don't want to learn and refuse, like, enjoy failing their classes, and they take them and somehow like passion is discovered and magic. Everyone turns their life around. That's not a real classroom. It happens every now and again, but it's not a real classroom.
Yeah. And it's also just not realistic. It's like at the end of the day, 100% of people aren't necessarily going to be able to succeed in one thing. And so it's like when you apply that to a classroom and you're like 100% of people need to be able to do all of this. In reality, 100% of people are not able to do everything all at once. There are certain things in everyday life where people are not naturally able to succeed at, and that's okay. And I think that's like an issue within like the system itself, especially when it comes to then GPAs and the fact that if you tank one class, that can impact your whole GPA.
Right.
And I think that adds a lot more pressure.
Right.
And then it's also just the ongoing slew of like, I'm giving you a task, and if it doesn't count for a grade, they don't do it.
Yeah.
And then if it does count for a grade, you're then constantly battling the grade book trying to get all these kids to pass.
Right.
So it's a constant battle of focusing on the grades. And I feel like you get to a point as a teacher where you have to just accept that there are battles you're going to lose, and one of the ones you're going to lose is making sure that everyone passes. And it gets to a point where you have to put that on the student, on the parent, guardian, and say, I'm giving you these resources, I'm checking in on you, and I'm going to have to let you fail.
Right. And in high school, I feel like it is a little bit more hands-off in the sense of the teacher, because you're just like, at a certain point, I can only do so much. I'm giving you all of these supports and I can't. But like, and there's incentives to do well in school, like, you have to have the grades to play a sport.
Yeah.
And how many of those like wink, wink, nod, nods happen? Have you ever had a coach come to you and be like, hey, do you think you could
Or like do the
up
whole.
this guy's grade?
You know
we
that-
need it for Friday night.
They asked if they could do a bit of extra credit, and I'm just like, they haven't even done the credit, let alone the extra.
Yeah. In elementary, it's a little bit, I don't know that I ever failed anybody. I had kids who just didn't grasp the concept.
Yeah.
And again, it was that thing where like I did something wrong and I need to, like, you are my responsibility to get to grade level. And then you had on kind of like the opposite side, the kids who were exceeding and then maybe didn't get one part of, if we're dividing fractions, they didn't get this one concept. And you had parents being like, they're failing. This is over.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're not going to get a scholarship to Harvard. I'm like, this is third grade. Like, no, we're good. We're still learning. There needs to be a learning process. And I think failure is important.
Yeah.
And whenever I had like my high flying students kind of feel that failure, it was always interesting because oftentimes that's the first time that they've failed at something.
Yeah,
and that's so crushing for them, but it's so important.
And I think that bleeds into the secondary aspect of it, like in high school.
Yeah.
Because I remember having so many students that have had it where they had elementary, middle school, where, you know, they had their teachers that basically they just get pushed through the system, where it's like, you know, like, I know it was a whole thing of like no student left behind, where it's like no matter what, everyone progresses to the next grade level, regardless of whether you've got the material or not. And in doing so, you know, you have it where you have students that are in the 7th grade reading at a 2nd grade level, and it's just expected, oh, well, it is what it is. And it's like, yeah, but that's a disservice to them.
Yeah.
And then it's a lot harder on the teacher to be able to modify their lessons to account for that. Or then you have students that are getting completely different assignments than everyone else.
Yeah.
And you're trying to keep up with it all. When you're kind of like, you know, or you have it where a case manager gives you an assignment that they've done in replacement of it. And you're like, but what is this for? And you're trying to work it out and do this whole like cross thing with your grade book and be like, this makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Right.
And I definitely feel like I noticed a lot, like especially when I taught freshmen in high school, just the absolute shock to the system they have of having 6 different teachers that all have 6 different policies with late work, fouling, all of this stuff.
Right.
And they've gone from having one teacher in like, you know, elementary or middle or whatever that has effectively babied them and allowed them to just get through and pass, and don't worry, we've got this. And, you know, they're their main teacher that they're like tight with, and they're like, oh, thanks, because my mum knows your mum, but you got their cell phone number. To suddenly they have all these different teachers, all with all these different policies, and they've got all these classes that they have to keep up with, and then they're suddenly fouling. And it's not like before where it's like, oh, you're fouling, but don't worry, we're going to get you through, honey, we're going to get you through. So suddenly they're fouling 6 classes all at once. And they're like corrupt, and they're like, what am I doing with my life?
Right.
Like, and yeah, I definitely noticed just seeing that kind of like emotional realization and like the amount of students that shut down because of that.
Yeah.
And it's that thing where it's like, especially in high school, comes back to if it's not a grade in the grade book, students aren't motivated to do it because they're like, what am I doing this for? And you're like, well, you need that. You need to practice to be able to understand the concept. Why would I grade you on something that you've not even done yet? But then if you don't grade it, they don't do it, they don't practice it.
Right.
And then so it's the whole thing of just the way the grades are calculated in the US as a whole bleeds into that.
And that's kind of, I don't know if this is kind of universally everywhere, but in where I'm at in New Hampshire, they're kind of switching the way that grades are done into competencies. So you're graded on a scale of 1 to 4. 4 being that you are excelling, you understand. 3 being like you're beyond, you're beyond understanding, and then 2 is passing, and 1 is we need a little bit more time to go over this concept with you. And now it's going out to parents and to have parents and students try to rewire their brains that a 2 is good. A 2 is passing, and that's okay. Like, that's good. Yay. You're on track. But like everyone wants like the 3 and 4. Like, well, why did they have a 4? Like, just give them time. It's the grading system. I don't know that there is one good way to do it. I don't know that this is the solution, but I think this kind of helps with that idea of failing. Like, yes, you might be failing in this aspect, but look at your understanding over here and, you know, maybe build confidence that way.
And that's what I think works better, like how they do it in England, is the fact that you have these assessments that are spread out where you practice it, you do the assessment, you get graded on it, and you can clearly see a clear trajectory of, does this student understand these concepts or do they not? And the natural consequence of, if there's a student in a class that's constantly not getting it, especially in like high school, is they then get moved down a set, or if they're really excelling in their class, they get moved up a set, and each set class is modified for that set.
Right.
And it's not to say, oh, you're in step 4, like you don't, it's saying you are literally with people of equal ability to you, and we are going to make sure that you succeed in the ability that we know you are capable of doing.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, you're on a 2nd grade reading level, I'm putting you in a 9th grade reading class, and good luck, you need to do it. Because it doesn't work. Like, and it's all about like, you need to look at the subject and what you're getting from it and what you need.
Right.
And what you need from an ELA classroom in reality is you need to be able to read basic directions and be able to understand them. So if you go into a job and they're like, oh, here's a contract you need to sign for the job, you need to be able to read that and sign your own name.
Right.
You don't necessarily need to analyze the contract and do a presentation on it. It's like you need the fundamental skills. So it's like just putting them in.
It's just like normal social skills that we're practicing in those classes, but you know,
and I feel like that's
we're getting
what
stuck
gets lost.
Getting stuck in the.
So I definitely feel like you need to let your students fail, but I also feel like the system itself is what's failing the students.
Yeah.
And I think that's why so many students are just burnt out and are just like, because effectively the US, my opinion is the US curriculum, especially in the ELA curriculum, is a busy work checklist of do all this crap and I'll give you this grade.
Right.
And I think students are more and more aware of that, and they're starting to see like how it's mundane, and they think, why am I doing all this just to get a number in a grade book? Do I care?
Right.
And in all honesty, I don't blame them. Like, it's
Absolutely,
understandable.
no. Yeah. I think failure is very important to learn and to feel and to work through. But I think you're right. I think we should be teaching in a system that lets students fail, but also supports them in coming back from that failure.
Yeah, and has it where it's like, you know, you failed at this thing, but how can we do this? And if you have X amount of students failing every single subject, why is that on the teacher? Why is that not the school looking at it and being like, why do these students not understand this test? What is it about what we're doing? But instead, it's always the teacher's a scapegoat. Why can't you do more? And 9 times out of 10, the parents or guardians are also on that.
Yeah.
Well, it must be the teacher, it's not my child.
Right.
And it's like, or maybe it's the system and we're battling the wrong people.
Yeah. Right. And this I think this kind of like sums up everything. Like, teachers don't want their students to fail. And we're here trying to prevent that every single day. So just remember, we're all on the same team. Woo! Sports.
Which brings us on to the next section of the podcast, British versus American schools. Woo!
Woohoo!
This is the part of the podcast where we compare the British education system with the US education system, if you can call it that.
Hey!
So, today's topic is discipline in British versus American schools.
Should we just cut this one short? And,
What is your experience of discipline in American schools? And do you think discipline in American schools works?
I taught in a school that did not have a lot of discipline issues. There were a few, but there were not a lot of discipline issues. And it was mostly on the teachers to figure out and work in their classroom. And a lot of times these children who had discipline issues were on a 504 or an IEP, were supposed to have supports. And that was not up to the overcrowded guidance counselor or their case manager, because they're helping 50 other students. It was to me in my classroom. So I don't know that I got a lot of support when it came to discipline issues. When a student needed to be taken out of the classroom, I could maybe get that to happen, but a lot of times it was like, just let them figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I'm speaking from an experience that I'm not dealing with extreme discipline issues like a lot of other people are dealing with.
Yeah.
I had like some emotional kids, but it was never like physical. I never was hit or attacked. But I know, again, like a lot of teachers are, and they're not being taken care of at all. It's just, you're doing a good job. Do you want a snack? And I don't think kids, because it's a privilege to be out of school. Like if you say, okay, like you're not welcome back into school. Oh, cool. I get the day off.
Yeah.
Or you're not welcome back into the classroom for a couple of days. You have an ISS. Cool.
Yeah,
I can just sit in a room by myself.
I also think there are just certain things with like discipline in the US that to me I'm just like, like I remember there was this whole thing about like students that were like, you know, bringing like items into school that they shouldn't have, which I think we can like read between the lines, and like, you know, selling stuff to other students at school. And, you know, they were like the ringleader of the whole thing, like with all these like, you know, contraband items that should not be at school and are not legal. And, you know, it got to it where it all got found out. There's footage on camera of them actively selling all of this like a freshman.
Oh,
and
no.
My natural instinct is you need to get that kid out of this school right now because that is not acceptable. That is a zero tolerance. That is breaking the law. It's endangering all these students because you don't even know what they're selling.
Right.
And it was very much like, yeah, we're going to have a little mini like trial where, you know, they plead their case. And I'm just like, a trial? Like,
no.
Where like basically it's like the parents, like admin, like some teachers come, like, and it's this whole, and I'm just like, but they did this, there's footage of it, it's very clear they did this. And they're like, well, we need to hear the student like explain why they did it.
There is like, no explanation needed.
And you're like, okay, but at the same time, like an action, a consequence. And I feel like that's very much something that I noticed a lot with the US education way of discipline was a student could literally do the most vile thing and absolutely unspeakable thing, absolutely disrespect you, undermine you in every single way. And you can report it and be like, I am not comfortable. As a teacher, I do not want this student in my class at this point because they've done this. I don't feel safe. The students don't feel safe. And it will fall on deaf ears. Like nothing will be done about it. They'll be like, okay, we're going to put them in ISS for a day, maybe out of school suspension. And then they'll be back in your class on Monday. And you're like, this student has literally cussed me out, told me that I'm a waste of space, has thrown crap at me, like, you know, thrown stuff at the other students, like whatever, made my classroom unsafe. And you expect me on Monday to just carry on as if nothing's happened.
Right.
And then you wonder why on Tuesday they're doing the exact same thing. And it's like, I noticed that time and time again that it's very much in a way where, and I think it comes down to that whole thing of like schools in the US are so much under the pressure of the board, of volunteers, of like parents and guardians within the district. And, you know, it's always the person, like, you know, the student that gets away with anything, suddenly has like a connection with a board member or suddenly like with admin or something. Right. And I think that plays such a large role in the discipline that is here.
Yeah, and I don't know why holding someone accountable for their actions or having consequences for those negative actions became controversial or something that we fight about. That's... Your child did something wrong. There are consequences. If your child went out and robbed a store, guess what? There would be consequences for that. Just like in school. Like, school isn't the wild, wild west. Yeah. That should be the place where there are absolute consequences. If you do this, then there's this.
And it's like we're seeing all the time, you know, you see like all these news reports about all of these things going on in schools, all of these dangerous acts, all of these like unspeakable things. Yeah. And so many times you hear teachers saying in statements, I went to admin. I literally flagged this up time and time again. I got ignored several times to the point where literally like they're looking through it and it's the same thing, just brushing it under the rug. Oh, well, we didn't know. How did you not know? You got 5 warning signs before and now you've got this mass thing where if you would have just acted and done something, you could have avoided this.
Yep.
And I just think you see that time and time again. I think it's just so frustrating. And I think it bleeds into that thing of there is no expectation. And I think it comes down to the fact that in the US, the way teachers are viewed as a society is that they are undermined. If a teacher comes and says, I'm worried about these students, I'm worried about the safety of my classroom, it comes back to, oh, they're irrational. They just can't handle their classroom. That's what this is. It's an irrational teacher that's complaining about their job. Yeah. But that's your job and that's your passion. And it's this kind of like bias towards teachers of everyone's had a teacher that in some point in their life they didn't get on well with, and they apply that trauma to every single teacher within society. And I find that such a shame. And it goes to that thing of like when you're in a high school, you have 6 different teachers for one student. Each of those 6 different teachers has different rules, different expectations. Yeah. You go from one class, I can't eat in here. Second class, I can eat what I want. Third class, I can turn in late work. Fourth class, I can't.
Yeah, it's just...
And it's like fifth class, I'm allowed a phone. Sixth class, I'm not. And every single class has a different rule.
Right.
And then you have students that are battling you saying, oh, well, why aren't I allowed to do this in your ELA class? Because I'm allowed to do it in my math class because that teacher's chill and you're like stuck up.
Right.
And I think that's what goes into it versus in England, this is the school, these are our policies. There is no, this is one policy for English and not for maths. It's this is the school. When you come to this school, these are the expectations, deal with it. Yeah. And as a teacher, you can't say, oh, I don't like that one rule because they're like, you have a job here. This is your job. You need to do it.
Right.
And it comes with that thing of like, I understand having freedom in when you teach, but I think things like expectations should be black and white by the book. This is a school. This is what we stand for. Yeah. You don't follow the guidelines, get out.
Right.
And I think in England, that is through and through. It's strict in places and it's stern, but it works a lot more. And that's not to say there aren't behavioural issues, because there are.
Right.
But it's in a way that as a teacher, if you are flagging up those issues and you're doing what you need to do, you will be supported through and through, because they're like, right, here's the expectation. As a teacher, have you done X, Y, Z? Yep, you have. They haven't followed it. Okay, they're out of your class for X amount of time.
Right.
And if there's a constant thing, that's when they're like, is this school right for you? You need to move to another school.
Yeah. And I think that's the question that we should be asking in American schools. Like, is this place right for you? Yeah. Are you succeeding here?
And instead, it's that whole thing of if you're kicked out of a school, that's when you then have parents, guardians in the US that are like, oh, so you're targeting my student. It's not that they've done this wrong, that wrong. It's that you're targeting them. And, you know, even though they threw a chair at this kid, they said that you called them out for their behaviour 3 days before. So because of that, you're targeting my child. And it's like, but your child was doing things wrong and not going with the policies.
Right.
And I think that's what I notice a lot. There's a lot of like excuses that go on.
I think consistency is kind of the thread that runs through all of this. Is in when disciplining. Like, I have a 2-year-old son who is 2. And one of the hardest things to do is to be consistent at all times. Like, if this is what I said was going to happen, if you did this, if you throw your food, then... And I said, please don't do that again. You are going to go sit in timeout. And if he throws it again, guess what? Like, I have to put him in timeout. I can't be like, don't do it again, and like pick up his mess for him. No, like we have to be so consistent with these kids and treat them like 2-year-olds.
And this is where I think it also bleeds into like the culture of like work-life balance and how like the US doesn't have that. And there are so many parents that are just burnt out trying to make ends meet, pay their bills and just keep a roof over their child's head, that they don't have the time and resources available to actively be there as a parent. And they feel like they're struggling, they're failing. And I feel like that's where a lot of that conflict comes from. It's the defense of, okay, but I'm trying my best and you're telling me I'm not doing enough. And now you're telling me my student's going to be like kicked out, that my student's going to be a failure, all of this. And I understand where that comes from as well. And
because they're taking that on, thinking like, just like when you let students fail, it's kind of like a mirror of us. When your child is failing or misbehaves, like that's a reflection on you too. And there's a lot of pressure to make sure that doesn't happen. And I think that's why there's a lot of fight from parents.
Because, yeah, it's even things like in England, like where you get like 5 to 5.5 weeks vacation time a year. So many parents I know do it where they're like, right, let me be strategic. I'm going to take a week off here when the kids are off school, here, there, and there.
Yeah.
And then because they're like, have clear, these are my working hours and I don't take my work home with me, which is more of a thing in the US where it's like, you know, you need to work to get ahead. And if you work and you try real hard, you never know, you might be able to die with a pension. You never know. And that's kind of like what I think it is as well. It's that mindset of like the US, I feel like is very much like a machine mindset where you need to go out, you need to work and you need to be in the system.
Right.
And I feel like that system itself is what's bleeding into like the students as well.
Agreed. All right. So America is not the winner here. All right. Let's choo-choo our way to the next segment here. Hot or not. This is where we take two things. We say if they are hot or not in the world of education. Our first topic for today is students who call each other out for their behavior.
I love it. What are you saying?
It is hot.
It is stunning.
Oh, man. That is the fastest way to become the favorite student of the day. Star student, gold stars all over. Yeah. I love a student who recognizes the reality. And oftentimes it's triggered by my face at a certain point where you're just done and you are exhausted.
I think the only time I do not like it is when it is the student that is being the most disruptive that does it. And it's like, you know, when you've spoken to the one student that always, you know, comes in, makes a show. Oh, I'm randomly having to like trip over my desk. Oh, I finally sat down. Oh, I need to go get a drink from the water fountain on the other side of the class. Oh, now I need to subtly go to my friend's desk and pick up a pack of gum. Oh, now I need to like, you know, look out the window and observe that. Oh, did you know there's a car in the car park? No, I didn't know that. Sit down. And then like, you know, you finally settle them down and then they're the ones being like, oh, why is everyone being so annoying today? And I'm like, it's you. You are the one that's being annoying
You're
today.
the problem. You're the problem. I'm not talking about the kids who are like, guys, she's waiting for us. Like, and then it just screams to get everyone to shut up. No, those are not the people that I'm talking about.
Mine's when you have a student that's like back talking you and you're like, can you please just sit in your chair? Why should I sit in my chair? Why should I sit in my chair? And then you have someone literally turn around and be like, can you just sit down? You're so annoying.
I love that. I love that. When there's obviously a little power struggle going on and that one student turns around and is just like, sit down.
My favorite was when I had a student absolutely rip butt. Like you like heard that far, like 3 classrooms down. It registered
Sonic
on the
boom.
It was a 6 on the Richter scale, and literally like a student like just turned around. Like this student's like laughing after doing it. And I'm just like, oh my god, I can't with freshmen. And this student like literally turned around and was like, why are you laughing? Like, what are you, like 12? Can you please, like, remove yourself? Like, that is disgusting. I'm literally going to vomit any moment now. And I was like, same.
So hot. We love a student who calls out their classmates when it's needed.
Unless it's you. Then call yourself out.
Yeah. Check yourself. All right. Our next topic is students who finish tests within minutes of getting it. This is the epitome of like me questioning why I do what I do in the classroom sometimes. Like when I spent weeks teaching something and then we get to that test, hand it out and like, make sure guys that you are trying your best, please. And then I have that one kid come up. I'm done. What can I do now? What? Have I not spent weeks of my life teaching you so that you can use the test that I spent hours on as a coloring sheet?
It's always when you're literally, you've settled the class, You're like, this is the assessment. You're like, you are going to take at least 30 minutes and you're literally like on the cusp of sitting down at your desk, about to plan the next lesson, grade something, do something on your to-do list that you don't take the work home with you or have to work past your contract hours. The moment you sit down and take a small sigh of relief, boom, up pots a little meerkat, done. You're like, how? I literally
and just like glancing at the test, you're like, nope, this is not.
My biggest issue with this is like, I was ELA, so I would look at the test, and I admit there are times where I'm like, this test is ridiculous. I don't blame them. Where literally they would have like 5 paragraphs of like reading for one multiple choice question, and I would be like,
oh yeah, no.
I would be like, you literally have to read how much to answer one question, and that one question is on the first sentence, and you wonder why they're like looking at this 4 paragraph being like, that's worth 5 points.
Right.
I would rather take a 0 on that one 5-point question than read 4 paragraphs.
Right.
And it's kind of like, I understand the logic because you'd rather not. And half the time, like all of these excerpts and everything were from things we'd never read before.
Yeah.
Or better yet, you're trying to basically teach the excerpts in advance because you're teaching a test and not an actual skill, which is great. And you would literally be like, how have you read 5 paragraphs in 5 seconds when you couldn't even read your own name yesterday? How is that possible?
Jesus is alive. It's a miracle. Thank you. Yeah, I think, you know what bothers me about that? And you touched on it with the just sitting down. A test day is very sacred. Like, that is the one time where I have done all of the planning, and because of all of that planning, I get to have 30 minutes of you working hard, showing me that you understood what we were talking about. And I get to have 30 minutes of silence to do something, like email someone back, or maybe just breathe for a second, quiet. Yeah. And then that little person pops up and goes, done. What can I do now? How about you go back and try again? Yeah. Because that's a not. Take your time.
It's a no. And then it becomes an even notter when they then stand at your desk and want you to grade the very test they've just done in 5 seconds while everyone's still doing the test.
If I had a student ask me to do that, I would have put a big X on it. Big red X. Be like, go try again. Because mommy will not be happy about this.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, they don't care about mommy and daddy when they're 15.
That's true.
Which brings us to our next section, grind our gears. Is it grind our gears or grind the gears? It's grinding something, I don't know. Grind Our Gears is the section where for 30 seconds we get a rant about something. It could be anything that grinds our gears. Grind our gears just means we don't like it, just in case you were confused.
All right, Vinny, your topic today is spam callers.
The fact that in this country it is okay to apply for a credit or a mortgage and then suddenly your information goes out to all these companies and they call you. I have had over 250 missed calls over the past 4 days because they have decided to say, oh, he's got good credit, ring him up. I'm getting text messages saying, hey, bro, would love to represent you. I can get you a lower rate for your mortgage. Take my number off your phone. I don't want to hear from you. My father-in-law is my mortgage broker. Can you give me a better rate than that, bro?
Bruh.
Should be illegal.
Bruh.
Should be illegal. I don't know how it's possible.
I don't know either.
And half the time they don't even speak. It's just silence. And I'm like, are you trying to take my voice so that you can like spam me or like...
Oh, maybe.
I've got a few TikToks. You can do that instead.
Just give me a follow.
Okay, this brings us to Jess. Jess, your grind the gears today is... That awkward sprint you have to make when someone opens a door for you.
If I am more than 20 feet behind you, do not open the door. I am perfectly capable of opening the door myself. I have arms and I can pull it open. Okay. Does it look like I do a lot of cardio? No, I'm not going to speed and sprint my way to you to make your life a little bit more comfortable when I can just use my upper body strength. I'm not doing cardio. Don't make me do cardio because you want to be nice. Thank you, but no thank you.
I prefer an electronic door anyway.
Just
Opens.
You get that Beyonce fan when you walk in too.
The worst is when you're in one of those spinny things
Oh.
and it's one of those ones that's not automatic and someone's pushing it and someone's literally pushing it at high speed and you're like, I'm going to fall over. And there's always a random child just in it on their own.
I always like those doors, the spinny ones, like I feel like you have to time it right. Like I feel like I'm a third grader trying to jump rope again. I can't get the timing right.
I feel like I'm in Hannah Montana the movie.
Oh.
Changing from Hannah to Miley. Seeing the love of my life, realises who I
Get
am.
the best of both worlds. Okay, now we're going to celebrate and recognize those underdogs of education. Today, we are recognizing and celebrating case managers. All right. Your wife works in special ed.
Yeah, so my wife's a speech
Is she a
path.
case? Oh, she's speech
So
path.
yeah,
That's
she
right.
is also...
Sorry, Ashley, I knew that.
She's a speech therapist, speech pathologist.
Yes.
I don't know science. She does something about talking, I don't know. She does speech. So yeah, I think she does act as the case manager. I get very confused with... Because I know sometimes you can have it where you can need speech, but the speech pathologist isn't necessarily your case manager and you have a separate case manager, but then the speech pathologist also works with their case manager.
Yeah.
And then other times the speech pathologist is the case manager.
Yes.
So I get confused.
Yeah.
So I think if you are speech only and that is the only service you need, then the speech pathologist is your case manager because that's the only service you need to meet and like uphold the IEP for.
Yeah.
So yeah, she like just had like her meeting week. So it's like I like as a student, like as a teacher, you have it where you're like, oh my gosh, I've got 1,000,001 IEPs this week. But I think seeing it from the other scope of the case manager.
Because the case managers have to write the IEPs, which is a legal document.
Yeah.
It is very important. And everything has to be perfect on that document to get the child the supports that they need. And then they have to go into 2,000,001 meetings because they have to do all of them. It's so much. And what they do to support the kids that are on their caseload, it's a lot to handle. And as a general ed teacher, I don't know that I could do my job to support those students without having the support from the case manager too. It's like what they do every day is astounding.
And I've seen it firsthand. It's like, as a teacher where you have it where you're like, oh my gosh, we're 2 weeks from the end of the semester and someone's failing and I need to get them to all this.
Yeah.
A case manager, especially like with what my wife does, she's like, right, they have goals that they need to fulfill by this time, by this meeting.
Yeah.
I need to be able to track, have they moved from this goal to this goal?
Yeah.
Do I need to change the goal? Have they succeeded? Have I even worked on the goal enough?
Yeah.
All of this because it is a legal document where they have to uphold certain amount of things. And then you have it where you're like, well, this student's absent and they've missed their minutes for that week.
Yeah.
And then they still haven't done their goal and I need to track them. And it's not like in a regular classroom where it's like, oh, I can just give them extra credit or this. It's like, no, they need to work on this very specific social skill and I've not been able to do it. And now I'm chasing them down, trying to assess. I'm chasing the teachers down, asking for clarification. And I have to track this in the data in this legal document that if I don't uphold, I can be sued.
It's stressing me out.
And I think like I wasn't aware of this. Like before my wife was a speech pathologist, I worked with case managers and I was just like, I would have it where I'd be like, what's the case manager doing right now? And now it's like I see it from the other lens and I'm like, there is so much work that goes on behind the scenes where you look at it and you're like, oh, well, they're not sat with their student right now. So like, what are they doing in their office? And it's like in their office, they're literally breaking down, trying to do all of this paperwork, all of this proof that they've fulfilled all of these legal requirements on top of chasing down parents, scheduling meetings, chasing down teachers for information, like, and chasing down students that have missed minutes, making up minutes, all of this.
They're like, again, I think like this kind of goes like there's two sides to this coin. Like there are really good case managers and there are some that are not fulfilling what they should be doing. And I've worked with both, but like the case managers who are doing what they're supposed to be doing, like that's hard.
It is a hard job.
It's such an easy thing to be like, oh, I'll like let this go. Like I won't make up those minutes. I'll just fudge it in the report. Like, but those people that are staying on top because they want to see their students successful, stunning.
I'm like, you need a lot of dedication to be a case manager.
You do. And it is not for me. So thank you, case managers, for doing what you do every single day. Thank you so much for joining us on the Hot Mess Teacher Express today. Please make sure that you are following us on all social medias, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, wherever else you people are in the metaverse.
Thank you so much for listening or watching. Have a lovely day and we'll see you later.
Have a lovely day. I love that.